Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it. Welcome back, everyone. For today's topic, I want to discuss the concept of providing value. Now, what this means to me is this kind of statement or kind of phrase that I've heard kind of thrown around a few times. Maybe you've heard it as well, but money follows value. And so I've been really thinking about this a lot lately as I've launched Pioneer Farmer, my new business, and I've really thought about this in a way of that I'm really trying to focus on just providing value to others. Ultimately, I want that to return something back to me, if I'm being honest. And so I want that to provide money or kind of financial benefits back to me and back to my family. But first, I'm trying to focus on literally the concept of providing value. And if you give enough value or provide enough value, then the money will follow. And that's really what this comes down to. And after all, money is just the exchange of value. And I think this is important in whatever we do. And that's why I kind of want to dive into this. And so I want to kind of tell you a little bit of a story. And I was already thinking about this, and it's kind of ironic, but I try to do every morning, kind of part of my morning routine is I read a verse of the day. And I don't want to dive into this a lot, but what this comes down to is it's really ironic sometimes because the verse of the day can usually pertain to something that I'm dealing with on, my current situation, my current life. Sometimes it's really relevant. Sometimes it's completely off the board. And I'm just trying to check a box as I go through the verse of the day and just try to get it out of my way so I can kind of say, okay, I did that, and now let's move on. But it happened to be that this morning when I was thinking about this concept of providing value is the verse of the day that came up. And so I want to read that to you. And so this is from Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, and it reads as this. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. And so I just thought this was very fitting for everything that I talked about when it comes to providing value, because that's what like I said before, I'm really trying to provide value to others. And I think I need to, you definitely need to have patience when it comes to that, but just realize that you need to first provide value if you want to, basically receive something in return. You need to first provide value. And I think this is also another thing that it kind of reminds me of is I go back to some of the books that I've read before or listened to, I should say. Now I'm actually kind of drawing a blank on this, but I think it's Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's been a couple years since I've listened to it. But in that story, he talked about, he went up to his dad and he asked him, how do you make money? And I think this is a concept that we all think about. Maybe kids come up and ask us, how do you make money? A little bit of a side story. We were delivering cattle to the sale barn a while back, and I had my kids with me, and they asked, well, what are we doing? And I said, well, we need to sell the cattle so we can make money. And it's always interesting when kids talk about money because they're so naive. And I really love that about that side of things because they are so naive. And I think sometimes we as adults need to be the same way. And I think if we ask ourselves, okay, how do we make money? Well, I think first off, we need to really focus on providing value. And I think that's, like I said, money follows value. So if you really kind of maybe shift your focus to providing value, then hopefully down the road, if you do not lose heart, you can reap the rewards of that value. Now, how does this look? How do we provide value? How does this apply to our everyday lives? So for me, in my business, okay, let's talk about this podcast here. I'm literally just trying to blast out value to you guys, to my listeners, and to anybody that's willing to listen. I want to provide value in my message. I want to basically build trust and rapport so that you can kind of get to know who I am and get to know my message and take something away that you can use in your operation, your own day-to-day lives. I do the same with the content that I push out on social media. or anything, Snapchat, whatever that looks like, I try to provide content that basically gives value to other people. And the same thing with Pioneer Farmer. Ultimately, my business, that's a business training program to help other business owners, such as similar to myself, other farmers and ranchers. I want to provide value in the experiences that I've been through and the hardships that I've had to go through, the struggles that I've overcame. I want to provide value by sharing all of those experiences and help other people do the same. And I think if I really try to focus on the value first versus trying to chase, okay, I want to get 5 clients. That's my goal for 6 months or a year, whatever that timeline is, to say I want to get 5 clients because that's going to equal X amount of dollars. Well, if I focus on that, I'm truly, really going towards the wrong target. And so for me, that's why I've really tried to shift my focus on just providing value. I want to really serve, maybe still keep that, say, 5 clients, but I want to serve 5 clients. I want to give 5 clients value. I want to give 5 clients a life-changing experience that I have had using a software tool that's really all-encompassing to help you manage your day-to-day operations and different values of that nature. And so that's what I've really tried to focus on within my business, within the podcast and the new business, Pioneer Farmer. Now, kind of taking a turn with this a little bit, talking about on the farm, because most of us that I'm talking to, you're probably a farmer, a rancher, or just even an ag business owner, whatever that looks like. I want to say it can be a little bit tricky to think about providing value, say if you're a row crop farmer, because for me, the way I see this is if you're, say, maybe a service-based business, or I've got a friend that's got a shop, mechanic shop, you're literally providing value for that customer, and everything you do within that relationship is going to determine the value that that customer gets. Now, it's really easy to see that value, or maybe the lack thereof value, if you are not very good at that relationship, because it's immediate. I mean, you're going to know exactly how that customer perceives that value, how that customer really values what you do for them. And so that's why when I take this back to the row crop side of things or the livestock side of things, it can be a lot harder to see that value when you're, say, just raising the crop, delivering it to the ethanol plant, a huge company, and you're not seeing that end customer, that end value, or how that value is perceived by that customer. So that can be a little bit tricky, but I think that doesn't mean we can't focus on that. I think we still need to focus on raising up a good quality product that can be useful to the end customer, because ultimately that's going to be a benefit to us. It's going to be a benefit to the consumer. We still need to focus on that. And I think when it comes to the cropping side of things, in order to first raise a good quality product, you need to start with the environment of that product or the environment of the crop, such as the soil. Not to go on a side tangent, but I'm a big advocate for soil health and really focusing on that. So you need to focus on that to hopefully get your a good end product in the end. Or maybe you are a farmer and you're trying to focus on maybe more value-added products, maybe something you can try to sell direct to yourself, and that can be kind of taken into a turn here when we go to livestock side of things. I'd say that one's maybe a little bit easier to actually see the end product because, for us even, we finished out a couple fat critters this last year and sold those locally, and you see that value a lot faster, and okay, or maybe you see if you screwed something up, you're going to see that value and how that value is perceived by the customer a lot faster and a lot more immediately. You're going to know exactly how what you did affected the consumer. And so I think that's important to remember those different things in our business. And like I mentioned before, maybe you have a service-based business or maybe a seed business, some sort of custom operations. You need to really consider, I need to first give value to that customer. What does that customer find valuable? That's maybe some research that needs to be done. Maybe if you have a seed business, you need to find out, what does that customer find value in? Maybe it's not necessarily getting the cheapest seed. A lot of times it's what is the value that we get after the sale, or what kind of value do we get from that bag of seed beyond more than the price that we get. And so I think it's really important to analyze those different things. Or for us, even just another side comment, we do some custom drilling, or we do maybe some custom farming. We need to realize, what is it that customer or client really wants. Okay, yes, they say they want the crop harvested. Okay, Well, we can do that. Anybody can come in and do that, but can we do it on a timely manner? Because they're going to provide, that's going to be value to them if we get it out on time. Or maybe it's actually we are providing yield maps after the fact that we can sit down and go through them and say, this is what we saw as we went through the field. These were the good areas, the bad areas, and we can give that to them, and they get value from that as well, more than just the value of getting the crop harvested. So we need to kind of keep that into consideration. The next thing I want to talk about here is we talked about business. How does value look when it comes to our business? But how does value look in our personal lives? Because I think there can be value had there. I talk about money being the exchange of value. Well, I think you can give value and maybe not necessarily get money in return, but you can still get something else of value to you in return. Now think back to the old days when we didn't have money or the currency. You traded your services for maybe something that was valuable to you. Maybe you needed some supplies for fencing and you traded your time for that. Or we grew up, even when we start out into our careers of farming or business or whatever, if we're trying to get started, oftentimes we trade labor for the use of equipment. So think about different things like that. It's not necessarily the exchange of money, it's just the exchange of value. So that can be put into, if we're talking about dealing with friends or family, maybe we're helping our friends out when they need it, because we all know that time's going to come around where we're going to need that as well. So hopefully if you do not lose heart, you're going to receive that as well. But also realize that, if you are helping family or friends, do not necessarily expect to receive that value back immediately. You might just have to remember that over time, you're going to get the value back that you put into relationships. So keep that in mind as well. The other thing I want to talk about here when it comes to personal lives is, maybe your kids or even your wife. The value that you put into those relationships, that one actually may take longer, especially when you're talking little kids. When you're trying to put value into the relationships now, maybe that value is just quality time. Maybe that value is just spending time with them, reading stories with them, being home at night. And that time could also be value to your wife as well. When you're there literally to help put the kids in bed at night, because it's a lot more stressful for her if she has to do it by herself. So kind of keep that in mind. That's value to her, to where you may see that back down the road for something else. Maybe she's able to help you with something that you need help with. And that's how that value gets exchanged back and forth. So just kind of keep that in mind. That really applies to our personal lives as well. So how does this pertain to you? As you're thinking about this, as I talk about this, and you're taking this message in, what are you thinking about? How can you really focus on providing value to others, or what does that look like? For me, I think it's one thing I think a guy should really think about here is, what are you currently focusing on? Are you currently focused on providing value to others, or are you focused on only chasing the dollar? And I think that's a big one that we need to consider, because especially me, I've been guilty of this as well, is just really, truly just only trying to chase the dollar, only trying to do things that you get, an immediate impact from, or a dollar back from, or say, I'm not going to go help that neighbor because he doesn't pay me very well. I'm going to go help this person instead because I get paid better. Really consider, what is your true focus on? And maybe if your focus is on chasing the dollar, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but let's consider maybe shifting your focus, because in the long run, that's not going to serve you, or at least in my opinion, I don't think that's going to serve someone if you're only chasing the dollar. So let's talk about, how can you shift your focus, and what does that look like? For me, this was also something that I was thinking about here recently, is just making sure I'm continually focused on providing value and shifting my focus, or at least always making sure it's realigned with my goals and where I want to go. So I've talked about being intentional. I think that's the big one here, is we need to just be intentional about what we're focusing on. As I kind of close this out, is I was thinking about this, is how can I always make sure I'm focusing on the right things and always being intentional about what I'm focusing on. So for me, at the end of the day, if I can ask myself, did what I do today get me closer to providing value to others? And I think that's a big one, and you can kind of phrase that differently, but that's in my current situation, my current life, trying to get Pioneer Farmer up off the ground. There's a lot of things in the back end that we're working on, so I'm not directly serving people. I'm not directly serving clients. That's at the current time of this recording, I don't have any clients, we'll put it that way. So I'm trying to ask myself at the end of the day, did what I do get me closer to providing value to others? And even like recording this podcast, for instance, I believe, I'd hope anyways, that I'm providing value to the people listening to this podcast. So I think it's just a matter of, asking yourself at the end of the day, what I do today provide value to others? Or in the same way with the farming operation, if you kind of know, if you get into a routine of maybe asking yourself this at the end of the day, or maybe you're one that really is good about doing a journal at the end of the day, recording everything that you do and look back and say, did what I do today actually provide value? If you can kind of go throughout your day to remember this, okay, at the end of the day, I'm going to ask myself this, and I need to be honest with myself. Remember that, did what I do today provide value for someone else? And so I think this is just a really good concept, a really good mindset shift that we need to keep in mind and just need to make sure we're focusing on the right things and being intentional. I hope you got value out of this episode today, and I will catch you next time. Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram @GarrettRuskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.